It's another Thunder Thursday at newsok.com from the downtown studios here at the Oklahoman. I'm Darnell Mayberry, assistant sports editor, here with Barry Trammell, columnist, Thunder beat writers Eric Horn and Brett Dawson. Guys, we're talking MVP Russell Westbrook and free agency. A flurry of activity already with free agency, but let's start with the MVP award ceremony for the NBA Awards show Monday night in New York City. Brett, you were there. Russell Westbrook was officially named MVP. This is the worst kept secret in basketball. He garnered 69 votes of a possible 101. Brett, what was your reaction to Russell Westbrook being named MVP Monday night?
Well, not surprised. To me, the biggest surprise in the MVP race was that James Harden showed up for the NBA awards. I didn't think he was going to be there knowing that he wasn't going to win, and everybody knew Russell Westbrook was going to win. So I was a little bit surprised that even one of the other finalists showed up. But I thought, on the whole, good night for the NBA to just have people talking about the league in the summer. Good night for TNT, probably just to get one extra night of programming. And I thought, maybe not the world's greatest MVP speech from Russell Westbrook, and probably not the best speech he's given this season, because I thought the one at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame was a little bit more moving than this one in some ways, a little bit more impactful. But, on the whole, a pretty good night for Westbrook, a pretty good night of celebrating what was, really his regular season.
Eric, Brett, you guys watched it from home like I did. What was your reaction to the event and to the speech?
Well, the event itself, for the first time that the league was doing it, I thought it was okay. It could obviously improve and get better. It's a little clunky at times. Too many sketches. It seemed like a 90s hip-hop album with way too many sketches in it. But Russell Westbrook's speech, as Brett said, probably the Michael Jordan one, the induction into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame was probably a better speech there. But the emotion that Westbrook showed, obviously everybody enjoyed that. You don't get Russell Westbrook with that much emotion very often, if ever. And for him to lay it all out there, to cry and talk about the family the way that he did, I really think he showed a side that a lot of people aren't used to seeing. So I thought it was refreshing.
He cried.
He cried.
He cried. Barry, you had some thoughts about the event as a whole, and you heard from someone with the NBA who tried to explain a little bit about the process. What did you learn?
Well, I thought the content of the show was much better than I thought. I thought the speeches were good. I actually thought the drama was pretty good. Like, I didn't know who was going to be Defensive Player of the Year. Maybe other people did know through research and whatnot, but I didn't know if Kawhi or Draymond Green was going to win it. I actually thought there was a little bit of drama. I thought Russell was going to win it, but I wasn't convinced. I didn't know for sure. So, and then of the speeches I liked and the Bill Russell tribute, I thought there was a lot of good things in there. But the presentation and the production I thought was very sloppy and clunky, as Eric said. I didn't think Drake was that good of a host. The interviews were embarrassing, out with Draymond Green, James Harden. You have Ernie Johnson and the crew sitting over there on the side, and they'd go to him every once in a while for some banter. Just give the mic to Ernie, let him host. If you need the comedy, you got Charles right there, let him talk. I think they went overboard. The NBA actually, Turner actually contracted with Dick Clark Productions to do the show. So this are people that have done award shows, Miss America, that kind of stuff before, but it sure didn't seem like it.
Barry, the single best idea for improving that show came from you. And if the NBA wasn't reading it, surely they're watching Thunder Thursday. Get Greg Popovich out there in the crowd. Do sideline interviews with Greg Popovich. I love it. I want Greg Popovich asking James Harden and Russell Westbrook questions. I want him to ask Russell Westbrook about what he's wearing. And maybe he could interview Dorsberg.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good.
One thing I really enjoyed about the show was just seeing what the guys were wearing in the red carpet before the show. I don't know, Brett, you can speak to this more than I can, but I thought it was cool that, not just the guys that were up for awards were going down the red carpet, but, a lot of Thunder guys, Taj Gibson and Andre Roberson and Victor Oladipo, they had an opportunity. Even Nick Collison was there looking spiffy in his suit. So it was a cool opportunity to see a lot of, the NBA stars go down the red carpet, stop them, talk to them, and get a little bit of feedback on what they thought of the event.
Taj Gibson ran that red carpet faster than he runs the floor. He was not stopping for a lot of who are you wearing and what's going on with you, Taj. There was none of that. But the other guys
doesn't seem like Taj is seen.
Didn't seem like Nick Collison's to me, but he seemed pretty comfortable. Taj, he's a working class guy. He was in and out pretty fast. The other guys did stop. Enes Kanter did, not shockingly, more interviews than anybody on the red carpet, I think. And Andre Roberson stopped for a minute and talked to us lowly locals.
Guys, here was my biggest criticism of the show. I felt like it slighted Oklahoma City fans. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever it was, Kevin Durant won his MVP award. He got a 25-minute speech. They did it at the old practice facility in North Oklahoma City. Russell Westbrook got 8.5 minutes. So it felt sort of rushed. It's probably the longest Russell Westbrook's ever spoken at one time in his life. But I felt like his speech was rushed, and I felt like Oklahoma City fans were shortchanged because he didn't have the opportunity to do that here in front of them. Is there anything that can be done about that?
Well, I guess you would, in theory, have to move up the awards show, because it would give, it would give the Thunder an opportunity to put together something similar that they did for Kevin Durant. Russell has obligations in terms of like a camp, in terms of some other business obligations that he has, that he couldn't be able to come back and do the whole, MVP thing that Kevin Durant had. Not to mention he did the speech at the awards ceremony, so that kind of acted as his Kevin Durant moment. But yeah, it would have been great to have an event where the entire city could embrace Russell and he could speak to the city and have all of his teammates there in the organization. And I guess the way that the NBA awards fell kind of made it hard for that to happen for not just Russell Westbrook, but anybody who would have won. It would have been tough for James Harden. It would have been tough for Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, anybody.
I don't know why they couldn't do something like that. I mean, talk to Russ sometime in the last month. Say, hey, Russ, you're going to be the MVP on this Monday night, June, whatever that was, 26. Hey, you're going to be the MVP? Here in the next few days after that, when you have free, we'll have a rally in downtown Oklahoma City. We'll go to the Myriad Gardens. We'll go to the Bricktown Canal. We'll go somewhere. You get up, you talk for 10 minutes, and let everybody, thousands of fans will come, cheer you. It'll be great for everybody. I don't know why they couldn't do that.
And Brett, Russ seems to love that. When he signed his extension on August 4th of last year, he got on top of a little bitty stage right outside the atrium at Chesapeake Energy Arena and said, I love Oklahoma City. I wanted you guys to be the first to hear it. So it seems like he gets off on that and just able to convey his true emotions for this place, for these fans. You reported that there won't be a celebration here. Was there any consideration on the Thunder's part or Russell Westbrook's camp's part of doing something here in Oklahoma City?
I don't know that there was any consideration of it. He's not back here until sometime during the first week of July. He'll have his camp in Oklahoma City. He'll also have one in Tulsa. So he would be back here for that. He's been traveling. He was in Paris for Fashion Week the week before the MVP. Obviously, he's a new father. His schedule's a little bit complicated. I think to a certain extent, it would probably, although that would be a nice moment for Oklahoma City fans, I think there's something a little anticlimactic about it. He's already given a speech. He's already thanked everybody in the organization. He went out of his way to thank the fans in Oklahoma City. I don't know that there's a whole lot to be said for a thing here. I will say this, though. In the last 4 days, is probably the question I got asked the most by fans.
Yeah.
Outside of who are they going to sign in free agency.
Yeah. Okay, guys, let's move on to some free agency news. And in big news, yesterday was a blockbuster trade between the Clippers and the Houston Rockets. They sent Chris Paul to the Clippers. He will team with James Harden. Guys, he's considered by a lot of people to be one of the premier point guards in the league, now teaming up with a premier point guard, de facto point guard, in James Harden. What does this move mean for the Houston Rockets, and what does it mean for the Western Conference?
Who's going first? I'll go first. For the Rockets, I think they get better. I don't know how much better, but I think they are a better overall team. Chris Paul is obviously one of the greatest point guards that the game's ever seen. He's a good defensive point guard. He's not quite Patrick Beverley good defensively, in my opinion, but he is good defensively enough to be able to make up for his loss. Where it hurts the Rockets, I think, is in terms of their regular season depth. Sam Decker and Montrezl Harrell weren't guys that were playing a ton in the playoffs, but they were contributing to the Rockets in the regular season. And, the less of those guys that you have to help during the regular season, it stretches the Rockets, and they're going to have some times where they're probably going to be playing guys some extended minutes unless they fill the roster with some, bit part pieces that might not be as good as the guys that you sent to the Clippers. But overall, I think they're probably a better team. In terms of the rest of the league, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, the Clippers are obviously going to be a mess. Are they going to be able to re-sign Blake Griffin long-term? It seems to be, that's been reported by Ramona Shelburne of ESPN, that's going to be their goal, to re-sign Blake Griffin long-term. But the Clippers are probably going to take a step back. The Rockets, it remains to be seen if they're going to take a step forward or not.
Eric, let's stick with you because you wrote about Blake Griffin for today and the Thunder's path potentially for landing him. What does the Chris Paul deal mean for Blake Griffin, and what are the chances of the Thunder actually landing him?
Blake's kind of got the ball in his court. I mean, to use a pun, I suppose. Does he want to go back and sign long-term and try and get the Clippers back to where they were with Chris Paul? Or does he walk into their office and say, look, I want to go elsewhere. That's what would have to happen for him to be able to get with the Thunder. The Thunder's over the cap in terms of money. The cap's at $99 million. The Thunder's at $111. They would have to orchestrate some sort of sign and trade to where Blake Griffin would have to walk into the Clippers' office, say, I want to go to Oklahoma City, find a way to get me there. They probably have to bring in a third team, to be frank, because the Thunder doesn't have a ton of assets that the Clippers are probably going to want. The Clippers are trying to clean house with Jerry West in there and trying to make room to go after some big fish, maybe next offseason, in terms of guys like LeBron James, Paul George, who they think that they could get there and start this rebuilding process. The Thunder doesn't have anything the Clippers probably want. So, in short, I mean, Blake Griffin would basically have to say, I want to come home, and that seems like a long shot at this point.
And not only would he have to say, I want to come home, he'd probably also have to tell the Clippers, if you don't orchestrate this, I'm going to Miami or Boston, and you get nothing. I mean, if it's just an option of, if you can make this work, I'll go to Oklahoma City, and if you can't, well, I guess I'll just stay in LA. You know, they have no incentive. So he would really have to leverage another team to have any chance of making that happen.
Is this just one big dream for Thunder fans and the Thunder? Blake Griffin coming home, coming back to Oklahoma City?
Maybe I'm wrong. I've seen no evidence any time in the last 8 years that Blake Griffin would be interested in coming home to play in the NBA. I think he loves Oklahoma. I think he enjoyed his time here, but I've seen no evidence that that's really something that he wants to do is come back. And until I see a shred of evidence from Blake Griffin, then I'm not going to put it anywhere except the pipe dream.
He's got 2 kids with a girl from Southern California. He's got stake in a production company, a movie production company. He's all over TV, comedy, movies. The incentive seems to be for Blake Griffin to stay in Los Angeles.
Brett, yesterday in the office and even on the Thunder Buddies podcast, we talked about maybe this isn't the best fit if Blake Griffin did come here. He's got some injury concerns. And also, we talked about Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. They were only good enough to get to the second round. If you now team Blake Griffin with Russell Westbrook and Steven Adams, how good are they going to be?
Yeah, how different is that really? It's Blake Griffin, who we know what he is. He's, despite the injury concerns, he's one of the best playmaking power forwards in the league. He averages over 4 assists a game in his career. He's a really good, solid rebounder. He's expanding his game offensively. He's really good, but we know what Blake Griffin is. We have a body of work. We know what Russell Westbrook is. He's one of the best point guards in the league, just like Chris Paul is. We know what Steven Adams is. He's one of the most versatile defensive centers, kind of like DeAndre Jordan, a little different player, but you have some similarities there. Are the pieces around those guys, especially given what you'd have to give up to clear cap room to get Blake Griffin, are the pieces around him going to be that much better than the pieces the Clippers had in LA? Maybe this is one of those things where it lands you that second star that we always talk about with Westbrook, but maybe it doesn't make you a whole lot better.
It's definitely not a slam dunk, but it does make you a better, more talented team. What are all these moves doing for the different teams in the Western Conference in terms of trying to catch the Golden State Warriors? We talked about the Chris Paul trade. Now Blake Griffin, where he might end up. What does this mean for the Warriors competition?
Well, it means it's a sign that teams aren't giving up. Houston's not waving the white flag. Houston's saying, hey, we're going to chase the Warriors. The truth is, they're not going to catch the Warriors. Now, massive injuries hits Golden State. Sure, somebody else could win. But Chris Paul in Houston is not going to be any kind of real threat to Golden State, for crying out loud. In fact, I would argue that in some ways, Houston is less equipped to handle Golden State than it was last season, because all of a sudden, their defensive flexibility, in my opinion, is sort of taking a hit. So, I think it's a good sign. You always want to try. You never want to rebuild. You never want to step back and say, you guys win it and we'll worry about it in 3 years. It's not what anybody wants to hear. It's not what anybody wants to do. Houston's not doing it. But the truth is, there's really not much out there that I see outside of Paul George joining Cleveland that would be a threat to Golden State next season.
What if he joined Houston?
Well, it depends on what they'd have to give up, but that would be more interesting. I mean, Paul George is the kind of player you need to sort of combat Golden State. Cleveland's got one of those guys. They could use 2.
It's interesting, guys, because we went from probably hating super teams to now the more the merrier. So just so anyone can go out there and compete with the Warriors.
Who's we?
You don't think that competition for the Warriors is better for the NBA?
No, I don't think the Warriors' dominance is good for the NBA. If that's your question, I don't think it's good for the NBA.
My question is, the formation of more super teams is better, so you have competition for the Warriors.
No.
You don't think that's a good thing?
No, because what you're doing is you're creating a huge gulf, a massive gulf. We've got a massive gulf between the Warriors and everybody else. Maybe that's diminishing a little bit, but over here, if the more super teams you get, that means the more derelict teams you've got. In other words, is it good for Indiana? Is it good for the Clippers? Is it good for Chicago? No. I mean, all of a sudden we're going to have 22, 23, 24 teams without a star. And that's terrible for the NBA.
So what you're saying is better is to have the foregone conclusion continue until it runs out, instead of having super teams that could push the foregone conclusion, which is the Golden State Warriors. Because you've got to have super teams to beat the super team.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good either way. Is that what you're saying, Eric? If that's what you're saying, I agree with you. It sucks either way.
Well, here's the problem, Barry. I think we're past the point of no return.
Well, that's probably true.
Chris Paul going to Houston,
You're probably
Paul George looking to go to either Boston, or he wants to go to LA, but he might end up in Houston with Chris Paul and James Harden. These guys are all teaming up now, and I don't think that we're going to slow down that train anytime soon.
Probably not. We just need more superstars. We need 60 superstars.
And super teams don't always work. Look at the Knicks.
Well,
Derrick Rose and Carmelo Anthony, Kristaps Porzingis. You're watching Thunder Thursday at newsok.com. We're talking free agency. It starts midnight Eastern Saturday, July 1st. Guys, a name that won't go away, Rudy Gay.
He's back.
He's back. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent when free agency starts Saturday. And there's a report, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, that he will hold meetings in Austin, Texas this weekend, and the Thunder is one of the teams interested in meeting with Rudy Gay down in Austin. Guys, how does Rudy Gay to Oklahoma City happen, and what would that mean for the Thunder?
It's going to be another situation where they're going to have to clear cap space, because unless Rudy Gay's taking an $8.4 million non-taxpayer mid-level exception, it's going to be really difficult for him to come to Oklahoma City. The guy declined his last year of his deal in Sacramento, where he was scheduled to make $14 million. The Thunder doesn't have $14 million to give Rudy Gay. He's probably going to get more than that on the open market, whether he deserves it or not. So right now, it doesn't look like a possibility. But that doesn't stop the Thunder from going and entertaining free agents and saying, look, we got to at least try and go after these certain guys. If the Thunder could get a sit-down with Gordon Hayward, they'd do it tomorrow. It's just a matter of, look, we don't have the money, but we're at least going to try and go after these guys. And I guess they seem intent on going after Rudy Gay. He's been linked to the Thunder since the beginning of last season, and it hasn't stopped.
why?
Hang on, Barry. Hang on. Let's go to Brett, because Barry's got some strong thoughts about Rudy Gay.
He does.
I just want to say, Woj's Rudy Gay stories are like vampires. They will not die. They will rise up every day. But here's the counter argument to that with Rudy Gay. He's going to be 31 when the season starts next year. He's coming off a torn Achilles. Maybe he won't get $14 million. Maybe for him, and for a whole lot of other people, it's worth opting out just to get out of Sacramento. And if you got to take a little pay cut to get out of Sacramento, so be it.
And maybe he doesn't have $14 million in 17-18, but he has $7-8 million for 17-18, $7-8 million in 18-19, and has more money over a longer period of time as opposed to $14 million in one season.
And the Thunder can't do that either right now. I mean, they have to make some things happen to even do that. We can't stress enough. Eric said it at the beginning of the show. They're already over the cap. They have negative cap money available. So, I have people ask me like, well, I know they can't get Blake Griffin, but what about J.J. Redd? No, nobody. They can't just go straight up sign really anybody except with an exception. So for them to get anything, they've got to do a sign and trade, or they've got to trade some stuff for very little return to clear out some room.
Okay, Barry, here's the softball I'm going to lob up to you. How much better does Rudy Gay make the Thunder next year if they're able to sign him?
Softball.
At the expense of who? Is Andre Roberson gone? If Andre Roberson's gone, they're worse than they were this past season. Andre Roberson's a better basketball player than Rudy Gay. It's really not even close, people. For crying out loud, Rudy Gay is a one-dimensional player, and that dimension is not all that important in terms of he's not a shooter. He's a scorer. He's a volume shooter, but he's not a three-point guy that spreads the court. That's what the Thunder actually needs. Plays no defense. He's a 31-year-old with a torn Achilles, for crying out loud. And now we're talking about not just paying him $7-8 million this year. Let's pay him $7-8 million when the 2020s get here. For crying out loud, what kind of ball player will Rudy Gay be at the age of 35 brother.
Barry, I've spent a whole season defending what Andre Roberson does. I think it is incredibly valuable. How many dimensions do you think Andre Roberson has?
I think he's got 2. I think he's got 3.
Oh, boy.
He's a defender.
He's a defender.
1.
The Thunder offense actually works when Andre Roberson's on the court. I know people don't want to believe it. I know they don't understand it. I'm not sure I understand it, but it's true.
Does it work in spite of Andre Roberson?
Well, maybe so, but when you take Andre Roberson out of the Thunder lineup and put anybody else in with the same 4 guys, they're better with Andre Roberson. They just are.
Okay, so before we came on, I said, I think I have a starting lineup for the Thunder next year. Russell Westbrook, Victor Oladipo, Rudy Gay, re-sign Taj Gibson, and bring and you got Steven Adams at center. I think that's a better team than what you had last year, a better starting 5 than what you had last year. And then Barry proceeds to say Rudy Gay is
They were top 10
trash.
defense this past season. They won't be if they plug in Rudy Gay for Andre Roberson.
The only thing with Rudy Gay is he's traditionally not got on well with any team he's been on. He's been a short-term guy every place he's been. And as Brett was saying before we started the show, every team that he's been on has been happy to let him go once they've let him go, and they've been better without him. So that's the issue you face with Rudy Gay, and that's the question of why I'm befuddled as to why the Thunder is so enamored with this guy.
Well, he's a 3-and-D wing. I don't love
In
Rudy
theory.
Gay. I don't love Rudy Gay, but he's a 3. He can knock down some shots.
He's
he
not
can
a
score,
3-and-D
and he
wing.
can-
He's
and
a
he can
2-and-D
play-
wing.
Rudy can play a little
Rudy-
defense.
Rudy
And
Gay's physical
D.
profile has always been more attractive than what he actually brings to the table, I think. That's going back to UConn, when he was a projected #1 kind of pick, top 5 kind of guy. I think he was drafted in the top 10, but he wasn't top 5, top 3. On physical profile alone and what he should be able to do, he should have been a #1 pick. He's a guy that gives you everything in theory that you would want in a player. But, I mean, he is averaging 18 points a game for his career, so you can't say he's a complete scrub. I think he would upgrade the Thunder. And I think that, I've said this before, the Thunder has to be willing to sacrifice a little bit of defense and have other guys step up in other areas. Victor Oladipo is a capable defender. Russell Westbrook's capable, we just don't know if he's going to do it because he's in year 10 of his career and he's devoted so much energy to offense. But the Thunder has to be willing to say, look, we're going to make sacrifices in certain areas to get better in others.
Wouldn't you? Let me give you another. We keep talking about Sacramento forwards. Wouldn't you rather have Aaron Aflalo?
No.
No.
I'd rather have Aaron Aflalo than I would Rudy Gay.
Now, I might rather have Ben McLemore at the cost. Who knows? Just because you don't really know what Ben McLemore is. But I got two important words of caution about Rudy Gay, and those words are Wesley and Matthews. That guy is not the same guy he was before he hurt his Achilles. And that Achilles injury, ACLs anymore, you can come back from an ACL and you can become something pretty close to what you were. We don't have a great body of evidence that guys, especially who are a little bit further advanced in their career, like 31-year-old Rudy Gay will be in August, coming off an Achilles. It is a scary injury to think about committing money to a player.
I'd take a Ben McLemore at the mid-level or less at 23 years old than I would Rudy Gay at 30 years old at whatever ungodly amount he's going to make in free agency.
My thing is this. On the night of the draft, leading up to the NBA draft this year, I said the Thunder should trade the 21st pick, maybe package it with an Enes Kanter or someone, and go out and get a veteran. You don't need any more 21, 22-year-olds in here. Rudy Gay, yes, the Achilles injury is a concern. He's coming off of that. You got to make sure that he's right and healthy. I don't think Sam Presti is going to make that move if he's not healthy. But he's a veteran, 31 years old. You're getting someone in here to complement Russell Westbrook and who's experienced and knows how to play. That helps the Thunder win now. Are they winning a championship? Probably not. But they're much closer to being competitive than they are if they go out there and continue to get young. I like it from that perspective, Barry.
If you want an old guy, go get an old guy that's not going to make your record
31
worse.
is not old.
It's pretty old with an Achilles tear.
31 with an Achilles.
And
It's also it's a real old Thunder. I mean,
What do you mean
it's
by
a
that?
very
It's old
Thun-
for the Thunder.
These guys are all in their 20s.
yeah,
They're all in
27
their-
is old for the Thunder, is what Brett said.
The one thing I will say about potentially bringing on Rudy Gay and signing him is asset collection. The Thunder does not have a ton of first-round picks to go through or give people or even draft on. I mean, they've got a 2019 pick, but they've got a lot of other picks tied up until 2022. You bring in a guy like Rudy Gay, let's say we rehabilitate him, he has a good season, or he has a good half a season, you can parlay that into something else in terms of acquiring picks from somebody else. You can trade him to somebody and get some more picks. So wings are in vogue right now. Rudy Gay's a wing. He's always been overvalued, and I think that you can maybe parlay him into something else if you bring him on board.
And the hard truth of the matter is there's just not a lot of guys out there to be had.
No, there aren't.
I mean, Barry just mentioned Aaron Aflalo. If that's the drop-off, then and you think he's better, but we disagree respectfully.
And look, this is a cold, hard truth. As much as the Thunder values Andre Roberson, who has more trade value if you have him under contract, a Rudy Gay or an Andre Roberson? And even though Andre Roberson is 5 years younger than Rudy Gay, he's still just not going to be able to get as much in a trade for a guy who's a defensive specialist as opposed to a guy who's averaging 18 points a game for his career.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Barry, are you okay with Rudy Gay, or can we?
As long as he doesn't come here, I'm fine. As long as the Thunder doesn't sign.
All right, let's move on, guys. Let's talk about Russell Westbrook, the recruiter. We never hear Russell Westbrook's name attached to recruiting these guys, and maybe texting or John Wall's out there publicly endorsing the Wizards to go out and get Paul George, throwing his own guys under the bus to go get Paul George. Why don't we hear that more from Russell Westbrook, and should he be more proactive in trying to entice other guys to join him in Oklahoma City?
Well, for one, we don't hear a lot of things about Russell Westbrook. He's pretty private, so we don't have a great sense. And they haven't gone out and gotten a bunch of guys, so we don't know if Russell Westbrook's been talking to these guys privately. You mentioned John Wall. That's a case where he's been very outspoken, very public. Isaiah Thomas is on Instagram, shouting out Blake Griffin and trying to get him. But then Chris Paul gets dealt to Houston, and we hear after the fact. Chris Paul and James Harden have been talking about this forever. They wanted to get together and do this, but we didn't hear that before. So it's hard to say that we have a great sense of what these guys are doing just because they're not doing it publicly.
Yeah, it's hard to say if Russell Westbrook is actually out there actively recruiting. I mean, he's so like Brett said, he's so close to the vest about everything he does. I think it would be cool to see more of an outward presence in terms of recruiting when it comes to Russell Westbrook, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he'd get guys to come here anyway. I think there's more to it than just Russell Westbrook being an outward recruiter. I think it takes a group effort. I think it takes, the Thunder being able to sell people on the idea of being able to win championships here. Guys, when they get here, they always talk highly of Oklahoma City. It's a matter of retaining those guys and bringing in some new guys as well. I think that's why a Blake Griffin move would be an important piece if the Thunder could pull it off in terms of a sign and trade. It would be not just getting in a good player, and I don't know how much better it would make the Thunder in terms of their record, but it would be a sign to people that, look, this is a guy who wants to come here. Regardless of the fact that he's from here and he's from Oklahoma City, it would be a sign that this is a player that is in his prime that wants to be a part of something with Russell Westbrook. We haven't seen that yet. It's only been a year and change. We haven't seen that people want to be a part of the Russell Westbrook experience. But if Blake Griffin were to do that, that would be a big step for the Thunder.
How do we know that Russell hasn't been doing it?
We don't.
I mean, look at the great recruiting job of all time with Draymond Green and Kevin Durant. We didn't know any of that was going on. They were bosom buddies. Apparently during the Western Conference Finals, we didn't even know it. So maybe Russ is doing it, but he does it on the QT, and he's keeps to himself. Maybe some of that is going on.
For all we know, he was in Paris last week. Jimmy Butler was there. Carmelo Anthony was there. A lot of those guys were in Paris last week. Maybe he was working the Parisian recruiting.
I know if I was in Paris with Carmelo Anthony, I'd be telling him to waive that no trade clause immediately because the Knicks are a dumpster fire.
I'll play devil's advocate for you guys.
Devil's advocate.
Maybe it's not that other guys don't want to play with Russell Westbrook. Maybe it's Russell Westbrook doesn't want to play with other guys. He did have a promotional, the commercial, now I do what I want. He spent his first 8 seasons deferring to Kevin Durant. And then he finally found freedom. I think he likes that freedom.
It could be a situation where Russell Westbrook has no desire whatsoever to recruit anyone because he is under the mindset that, yeah, I can do this. And I can do this with the guys I have. And I can elevate these guys to heights we've never seen before. So Russell Westbrook might just be that confident in himself to where he doesn't feel it necessary to recruit anybody, whether it's under the table or out on Twitter or anything else.
I don't think that's true.
What I said?
What you said.
Okay.
However, if it is true, that means come Saturday he's going to sign a 5-year extension.
Good news for Oklahoma City.
Good news for Oklahoma City. But I can tell you this. I don't know if Russell wanted to play by himself. I don't know if Russell enjoyed playing as a solo superstar this year. He seemed to. Everybody enjoyed it. Everybody had a good time.
It was the happiest I've ever seen him.
But I'll say this. He was not happy that Kevin Durant left. We know that.
Initially.
I would say still.
That hurts the winning.
I don't, you know, I mean, does anybody think that he's gotten over the grudge? I mean, I don't see any evidence of that. I think he's still pretty peeved at Kevin Durant.
I think 42 triple-doubles in the Maurice Podoloff trophy
He
helps.
loves the trophy. He loves the 42. He loves the season triple-double. I still don't see him doing much forgiveness of Kevin Durant. So I think he wanted to play with Kevin Durant, and I think that's going to be a long one to get over.
Well, we'll see, guys. Like I said, free agency starts midnight Eastern Saturday morning. Stay tuned to newsok.com for all the coverage of NBA free agency. Guys, we'll wrap it up with one more topic. Sam Presti, he's in the news. Ian Begley of ESPN.com has reported that the Knicks have the Thunder general manager on their radar. Guys, what do we make of this report? Sam Presti is obviously one of the best GMs in the league, regardless of what the peanut gallery says and some of the maybe questionable decisions he's made. He's one of the best GMs in the league. Any chance Sam Presti gets away and goes to the Knicks of all places?
Well, I've never thought his next move would be like another basketball move. I've always kind of thought Sam Presti has something beyond the NBA in his future. I don't see him going to run another team. Now, the report was internal discussions, that the Knicks have had some discussions about some candidates, and he's one of them. The one thing you can say for New York is if they've got Sam Presti on the list, maybe that franchise isn't quite as incompetent as we think. He should be on the list. The Bleacher Report study last week that he's done better with the draft than anybody else. He's a really good GM. Of course, the Knicks should think about him. I think Masai Ujiri is a little higher on their list. I think it's going to be very hard to pry Sam Presti away from here. But the idea that they'd be considering him, of course they should be. He's one of the best guys in the business.
The Knicks might want to go get Daryl Morey the way he's finagling this salary cap, to be frank. Daryl Morey's down there pulling magic tricks. Not to say that Sam Presti couldn't do the same thing, but you know, Sam Presti should be wanted. He should be wanted by a myriad of teams. If he were to lead the Thunder tomorrow, there's probably 98% of the teams in the league would want to have Sam Presti on board. He's brilliant. He's only 40 years old. He's probably got another 20 years in the business if he wants to do that. And you know, the Knicks, finally some good news from the Knicks. They're looking at some quality in their front office, or they're thinking about bringing some quality to their front office. And frankly, Toronto's general manager would be a great hire as well.
I'm sort of with Brett. I would be surprised if Sam Presti left the Thunder anytime soon for another NBA franchise. He'd be a little disingenuous if he did, in my opinion, because one thing he has always preached is, you know, community commitment and long-term stability and you know, the landscape, the deep roots of the community. You know, that's one of the things that pained him, I think, so much with Kevin Durant leaving, was he believed that Durant had bought into that. If he did the same thing, it'd be a bad look. So, frankly, I think that's one of the things that's most appealing to Westbrook about staying, is he wants to be as different from Kevin Durant as possible. So it's a little bit of the same thing with Sam Presti. Be a little disingenuous if he went to the Knicks.
The other thing is Sam Presti has always talked about quality ownership here in Oklahoma City. Clay Bennett and the group. That's not up in New York City.
It's not in New York City.
Phil Jackson wasn't the Knicks' problem.
It's not
Mike D'Antoni was not the Knicks' problem. Isaiah Thomas was not the Knicks' problem.
It's not in either one of the boroughs. It's not either one of the boroughs of greater New York.
I think they were part of the problem.
Part of the problem.
Now,
they're not the entire problem.
Now, it seems to me that to some degree, James Dolan backed off Phil Jackson for a while, and maybe Phil didn't make the best decisions. Maybe Phil Jackson was clinging to a dated offense that nobody wants to run anymore and that players don't want to play in. But yeah, you're right. The problems in New York run well beyond any coach or any general manager or any president or whatever the title you give somebody. It starts with James Dolan and it works its way down. But that's not to say those guys were doing a great job either.
All right. Thanks, guys. That's all for Thunder Thursday. For the best Thunder coverage anywhere, stay right here at newsok.com and be sure to read us every day in the Oklahoman.